This is a day 2 and 3 build diary for my Archmage Spark character, and the main goal behind this video will be to focus in on the crit swap involving a Widowhail bow as well as a rare crafted quiver. This is probably one of the more complex gearing changes, so I hope to walk you guys through all the hurdles to make this a little bit less daunting. I also want to touch on the state of the economy. There have been some bug exploits which have made a lot of the unique pieces of gear much more expensive much earlier than ever before, and this is quite unanticipated. So I want to go over my gearing in general, where honestly most of those expensive uniques that were in the POB we have made adjustments for, and we're using different pieces of gear to keep the budget down. So we're going to be talking about that in the latter portion of the video. Right now, you're watching me do a T17 map after doing the crit swap, and this is not something we're farming regularly, but you know, we wanted to do one simply to unlock the last Atlas slot. In terms of my progression, we ended day 3 with all the void stones done, as well as all the map favorites done. This is my character at the end of day 3. We've hit level 94, and the character passive tree looks pretty similar to the build guide. The main deviation I've done is, you know, we don't have all these jewel sockets there because I wanted to grab the 3 points to get this jewel socket simply to open up access to Unwavering Stance. I decided that stun immunity through Brine King was not good enough for me. We were still getting occasionally stunned. It felt really bad. So this removes all of our evasion. So again, just don't scale any evasion if you grab this, but we are completely immune to stuns. I think it's worth these 2 skill points. And if you guys notice your character is sometimes, you know, not being able to cast, it's probably that you are getting mini stunned every 2 seconds, and it's quite obnoxious. So this is worthwhile change. We have gone for the Glorious Vanity for Doriani. Now, in the Spark playlists, the Spark Archmage playlist, there is a video showing how to find the perfect Glorious Vanity. Unfortunately, when I bought this, there were only about 200 available, so I had to just search through every single one, import it into Path of Building by using the copy-paste function and just looking at what it gives us. And I went through probably 100 of them until I found one that was somewhat decent. And again, it's not going to be a perfect one. Later on in the league, you'll be able to use the video showing how to get a perfect timeless jewel. Here, I'll just pull it up. But if you're doing this right now, it's possible there's just not enough supply, and you're just going to have to look at every single one individually. So yeah, for reference, this is the video on how to get a perfect one, and I will be doing this later in the league, but we wanted to get this particular unique ASAP. So Glorious Vanity gives us Corrupted Soul. 50% of damage bypasses our energy shield. So any damage to our life is going to, first of all, enable our life leech, because we have life leech. We'll be able to life leech all the time whenever we take any bit of damage, because the damage is being split between life and energy shield. So we're essentially double dipping in terms of the life leech, because we have energy shield and life leech. Also, your Mind Over Matter only procs from damage hit onto your life. So this is going to be a big drain to our mana pool, but it's also going to be a big defensive boost, because we are always going to use mana for a defensive layer, rather than in the past, before we do the swap, the mana is only a defensive layer after we've depleted all the energy shield. Basically, what this does is it makes our recovery much more potent, and it makes energy shield a lot more effective, since we don't have to just burn through all the energy shield before any of the defenses kick in. This is something I don't think we should be skipping. In the League Start guide, we did have a Healthy Mind jewel up here. Healthy Mind was a few Divine Orbs. I think this is a pretty superfluous gem. I in fact unspec'd all of this to do the crit swap, and I suggest not going for that particular unique jewel. It's much lower in terms of the value it provides. Alright, moving on to the Widowhail crit swap. If you've fully watched the League Starter video guide, you will know there's a section that walks through in detail how to craft the ideal budget quiver for this swap. But the reality of this league is that budget quiver might still be a little bit out of reach for some people, so I want to scale back the expectations to make a functional quiver that will let us do this crit swap, but still be very budget friendly. So my quiver in particular, it did hit the correct eye level. It has T3 fractured life, which isn't perfect, and I hit the Essence of Scorn until we got projectile speed in a really bad chaos res roll. And I just settled here, crafted mana. So this is basically like 4.5 stats. And this is not ideal, but it's still quite good. I would say right now the market has 53 quivers that are functional for the build. The reality of the situation is we do not need to filter for eye level. Almost any eye level works. And I would say 60 life, 15 chaos res, or 30 projectile speed is going to be good as a fracture. Right now, there's just not enough high level bases with high life fractures for most people to be able to make that like perfect budget quiver. And that's fine, because I'm sure a few more days down the line, a lot more of these will drop and we'll be able to make the budget ideal quiver while still making use of the crit swap with just a very, very cheap budget one. Okay, so you guys could buy any of these. I'm going to walk through how we'd craft every single variant. All right, so right here, we're looking at Craft of Exile using Essence of Scorn, which is the crit multi-essence. Let's assume we have fractured projectile speed. So one of these. If you have fractured projectile speed, we are going to be rolling until we hit life, and we're just going to disregard the chaos res. My chaos res is so low, it's still okay. We'll die a little bit more to chaos damage, but you know, it is what it is. Let's say you want to stop at minimum 100 life. That actually only takes 6 essences, because life is pretty easy to hit in the prefixes. So you could use this projectile speed roll here. Just use 6 essences of Scorn on average, and you're going to have the implicit projectile speed, you're going to have fractured projectile speed, you're going to have very good crit multi, and you're going to have life, and then you craft on mana. So that's pretty great. If we do go for fractured life, then we're rolling for projectile speed. And let's just say we're going to roll for tier 2 projectile speed. That takes 19 essences. And keep in mind, all of these charts show the eye level. So when you go in Craft of Exile, you're going to be making sort of your expectations based on the eye level of your quiver. So as long as you have eye level 55, you're able to hit tier 2 projectile speed. And for life, as long as it's 64 or higher, you're still able to hit tier 1 life. But you don't need to hit tier 1 life. Like tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 is still good. So basically, eye level doesn't matter for either of these options too much. And the last one would be the fractured chaos res. So if you do get fractured chaos res, this will be a little bit more expensive in terms of essences spent, because you're going to want to hit some form of projectile speed, let's say tier 3, and some form of life. Let's put this pretty low, maybe like 70 life. So to hit both of these at the same time, that takes 44 essences. And then obviously you'd craft on mana. So those are my suggestions for how to do a really budget crit quiver to be able to do this swap. And I will put this link in the video description. And let's move on. So once we have the crit quiver, we are going to have to buy the Widow Hail. The way I chose to buy mine was I simply put a budget price as the maximum, and I sorted by the roll. And for like 20C, I was able to get one for 243%. Obviously, the higher the better, but don't go breaking the bank getting a perfect one. Just whatever your budget is, it will still be pretty good, because you can get pretty high even for very cheap. You know, this is 7 off of perfect. So we're going to put that on. You're going to want to have a Kalissa's Grace glove. What this does is it raises Spark's base crit from 6% to 8%, which means 100% increase to critical strike chance, which is what for example, the Diamond Flask does, would instead of bringing us from 6 to 12%, it would bring us from 8 to 16%. So raising your base crit is very, very powerful at scaling crit. And if you want to splurge a bit, you could buy a lot of Callista's Grace, because these gloves, I don't know, they're like 1 to 2C or something. And you're able to corrupt an implicit. So you see, I have a corrupted implicit plus 75% to base crit. So this is raising my spark from 6 to almost 9% base crit. So all of my increases to critical strike chance are going a long way here. As for the rest of my gear, this isn't required for the crit swap, but these are ailment immunity boots for Storm Shroud. Tomorrow, I'm going to be putting out a video guide how to craft these. I don't want to like overwhelm you guys in this video. Also, I just don't have time to do too much stuff in one video. So just keep in mind, I'm using Storm Shroud boots here. I will give you a crafting guide, don't worry. If you don't have the 100% to shock on your boots, you don't need to be using Storm Shroud. Storm Shroud is actually very expensive right now. It is 8 divines. That is shocking. So that's maybe not top priority, but is quite a good defensive layer. And that's why I'm able to drop Brine King. If you don't have ailment immunity, you must be using Brine King. Again, belt is just fixing resistance. The ring is just fixing resistance. Helmet, I did go for Lightning Leech on the helmet. I was getting it on the amulet from last video, but I did switch out the amulet, so we're getting it here. In ideal circumstances, we get it on the Glorious Vanity, but I just, you know, there's not enough supply to realistically find that on there. So yeah, we're going to be scaling crit. We did it through gear on the gloves. I did not change my gems. We're still Spark, Pierce, Archmage, Inspiration, Lightning, Penetration, Spell Echo. Once you do swap over to crit though, you will add Frost Shield. Where's my Frost Shield? It's right here. So this is an ability, you sort of just, when you're fighting a boss and you don't need to run around, you want to do Sigil Power and Frost Shield. Frost Shield raises our base crit even more. So by 0.38, and there's 4 stages, so that's 1.5 base crit. You do a lot more damage standing inside of this. Yeah, that's the main gem difference. Obviously, you're probably going to want to have Zealotry, because this gives you some spell critical strike chance. Although your aura, it doesn't matter too much. You can do Wrath, also very good. Haste, also really good. That's mostly based on what Watcher's Eye you choose. At this point, you should have dropped your rare body armor for a unique one. As soon as you switch to a unique defensive body armor, that is when you get rid of Determination. So that's why we don't have Determination here. I opted for Doppelganger's Guise, which gives 40% less physical and chaos damage while sane, and I never transition off of sane. The League Start video did suggest you use a lightning coil, and that is fine as well. The reason why I used Doppelganger's Guise was this was just cheaper on early day 2, since Tainted Orbs of Fusing were so expensive. I think Tainted Orbs of Fusing have dropped down. So Lightning Coil, Doppelganger's Guise, they're both very similar options. Pick one or the other. And the third option would be Cloak of Flames. So I would suggest you guys, everybody should be using one of these 3 body armors in my opinion, once we start progressing into the more difficult content, because Determination is just simply not going to be good enough. As for passive tree for the crit swap, I mean, it's right there in the build guide, right? We get some crit over here. We're getting crit here. We're grabbing crit up here. That should be relatively straightforward. Unfortunately, we lose a lot of cast speed. So you might have cast speed issues. I do not have cast speed issues because of my amulet. I don't recommend using Atziri's Foible, as it has been inflated all the way up to 12 divines. So I can quickly go over how I found this amulet. This amulet has a lot of cast speed, some crit multi, and some energy shield. The way I would recommend going about finding an amulet if you can't afford Atziri's Foible, and honestly, even if you can't afford Atziri's Foible, 12 divine is really expensive. I don't know if I would buy it at that price. This is the same thing we did last video. Just click trade for these items. No session mode. Adjust search weights for full DPS, nothing else. Checked. And then we just click amulet find best, execute. It's gonna control left click to bring up the trade link. And I just bought the best one. You gotta sort by sum. Now I do want to warn you, everything that says mirrored is coming from the Lake of Calandra League mechanic, and what that does is it basically sometimes even more than doubles every stat on the item. For example, this is 47 cast speed when it should have 20. So yeah, this Lake of Calandra mechanic has 2.5x the value there, but it's like a 50-50 shot if it inverts it or not. So you got to find one that doesn't have inverted stats that screw you over. This one gives you minus 77 intelligence, but a ton of crit multi and a ton of spell damage. And we could probably live without that intelligence, to be honest. So this would be decent, although you do take fizz damage against you. So I don't know if this would be particularly good. This one, we lose some energy shield, but we get a ton of cast speed. And if you don't want to deal with all these terrible traits, I would recommend just turning off mirrored items, because it's only the mirrored items that can have these downsides. So now we're just searching for regular amulets. And as you can see, you know, top one is 80 chaos, 50 chaos. These are like 50 times cheaper than the Atziri's Foible. And they're still going to give you quite a bit of damage. That's my recommendation there. Alright, I think that's enough for this video. We're going to wrap this up. Obviously, there's a lot I want to talk about, but we can only get through so much every day. If you guys have any questions or issues, always feel free to drop by the stream, drop by the Discord. We'd be happy to help you there. Look forward to tomorrow's video where we go over crafting the boots. And yeah, I'm going to be live on Twitch. Hope to see you there. Peace.